For MISC, hauling comes in two varieties: the put all the stuff on the outside hold series and the safely indoors type like the Freelancer. Well, the Starlancer MAX bridges the gap between the Freelancer and the Starfarer with a new hauling option firmly in that second category. The design has been in game for a few months at this point, so how does it perform? I'm Forrester, and this video will review the currently flyable MISC Starlancer MAX, which is described on the Star Citizen website as a medium freight ship. If you've seen other ship reviews on this channel, then you'll be right at home with this video, which follows the usual format. It's split into 5 sections, starting with a ship tour, assessing combat performance, reviewing handling and visibility, looking at the operating costs before finally summarising. As always, I've included timestamps in the video description in case you want to skip ahead. And if you're one of the many people watching who isn't yet subscribed to the channel, you might consider it so you can be notified of future Star Citizen videos as they go live. And we'll start the tour of the Starlancer MAX by approaching from the left or port side. There's a small window at the back of the rear section on each side which can be used to look out. Then there's the main body of the actual cargo deck of the ship, and it has a button on either side which allows you to deploy it down. In this example, it's filled with 2 32 SU crates, and you can fill it on each side of this cargo bay. The button then draws it back into the body of the ship. On the front left or port side, there's a small fuel port. Doesn't do anything in game at the moment other than, I guess, look pretty. And there's also the airlock. It's very difficult to reach this. If you're in a low gravity area, you will be able to jump up to reach it from outside, but in a regular gravity place, it's almost impossible to do. Moving around to the starboard side of the ship, on the front right is an elevator which can lead you up into the body of the Starlancer MAX. It will take you either to the lower deck or the upper deck. And then the cargo bay is mirrored on this side too. At the rear of the ship is ramp access. This takes you into the rearmost section of the Starlancer MAX, and there is a button on either side of the ramp which can deploy it. Once again, in this example, this rear section is filled on the cargo grid, so on each side there's room for a 32 SU crate plus some extra crates above for a single height. There's also plenty of space off-grid in the centre which can be used to store any kind of vehicle, ATLS, etc. This is a ship that works very well with an ATLS. And then on either side here is another set of elevators which leads you up to the upper deck, around the habitation section. Moving forward through the ship, we move through this cargo section. There's another button on either side which lets you deploy it down and up. And whether it's up or down, there remains a walkway between them which you can use to get to the front of the ship. At this front section there's a ladder to lead to the top deck in the case of a power out, as well as this airlock that we'd seen from the outside. That's the ladder that leads to the top deck. And opposite on the starboard side is the elevator. This is the elevator that we saw from outside the ship, which can leave the ship, or it can go up to the top deck alternatively. And And then at the front of the lower deck of the Starlancer MAX is this armory. There are some weapons lockers, as well as some suit lockers. There's also a handy little bench for when you're hanging out with your friends, I guess. We'll move all the way back to the rear of the ship and then do a tour of the top deck. Exiting out on this top deck, at the rear section are mirrored those two elevators. The Starlancer MAX has 4 different habs located around this section. The larger of those habs have some storage here, a double bed, and a desk, and above the desk is some storage. There's also a bathroom, complete with a sink, a mirror, and on the opposite side, a shower and a toilet. Some of the buttons for the toilet stick, some of them work. So there are 4 of these habitation rooms aboard. Here's another example of one. At the very rear of the Starlancer MAX is the engineering section. There are 2 very cool looking engine type modules, as well as some component access and some fuse access. These relays are built into these little storage cupboards on the wall. And that's very similar on each side, just with different components stored within each. There's a terminal for engineer access, as well as some more decorative elements. And then right at the back is access to the quantum drive. This door quite often gets stuck open. Moving further forward through the ship, this time on the port side, we see that mirrored elevator which leads to the cargo ramp at the rear, and then an example of one of the other habitation suites. This is the one that doesn't have quite so much shelving, so this is the slightly smaller room, and this is mirrored on either side. Again, it has a double bed and a small bathroom. And here's an example of that deploying toilet. Moving further forward through the midsection on the top deck is the recreation area, the galley if you will. There's a bar with some seats, a pool table, some more seating, as well as plenty of decorative elements around the room, like this manual processor access. Doesn't do anything, but looks cool. On the port side, there's a kitchen area with all sorts of kitchen-y type gubbins. Moving further forward through the Starlancer MAX, behind the sticky door, there's the ladder which leads to the lower deck. Component access for life support and a gravity generator. And the elevator which leads either to the lower deck or to leave the ship. At the front is some escape pods. There are 4 of these pods. And then right at the front of the ship is the bridge. At the rear on either side is a turret gunner station for a remote turret gunner. There's some more relays and component access in the middle. And at the front on the left is a pilot seat, and on the right is a co-pilot seat. The turret gunner station does come with its own little window, and there is a button which can be used to deploy a blast shield that doesn't do anything functionally but looks cool, and the remote turret is entered from these stations. The pilot seat comes with the MISC standard, very thin sliver cockpit windshield. It's sometimes asked on these reviews, why bother including a combat section for what is clearly a non-combat ship? Well, for the Starlancer MAX it does come equipped with some defences to make hauling safer, so it's important to be aware of how those defences perform, even if it's not the primary purpose of the ship. The pilot commands 4 size 4 weapons, by default M6A laser cannons, which are on quasi-turrets on the cheeks of the ship, similar to the placement on the Freelancer. They hit hard if you can keep them on target, which can be a challenge against smaller ships. The pilot additionally manages 16 size 3 missiles, which offer a fair punch if they connect with a target. Then there are 2 remote turrets, both armed with dual size 4 weapons, by default Rhino repeaters, and operated from the rear of the bridge. Both are dorsally mounted on the top of the ship, meaning the belly is a bit of a blind spot, but one turret covers the front angles and the second covers the rear. A dedicated player could probably stay in the blind spot with some careful piloting, but against NPCs, both front and rear turrets can often get some action if there's action to be had. All in all, the Starlancer MAX does have some teeth to defend itself, especially against NPCs, but realistically that needs the turret positions to be filled, and also there are far better choices for ships to go into combat with. In most instances you do better to have those turret gunners in a dedicated fighter, at least until things potentially change with engineering gameplay down the line. MISC fans can rejoice knowing that the Starlancer MAX has the usual thin strip window in the cockpit, giving significant visibility challenges. It does kind of contribute to the overall vibe of feeling like a big heavy cargo hauler, but also makes things challenging for pilots. The Starlancer MAX tops out at a fairly pedestrian 115 meters per second in SCM speeds, at least before afterbonus. At those speeds it flies relatively well, it's obviously slow, and as a chunky cargo hauler it feels like flying a freighter, but that's only right. It doesn't drift too much owing to that low top speed, so keeping it on the straight and narrow isn't too bad. One neat visual feature are the little thruster quadrants around the ship, which fire off during manoeuvres. Although thrusters are present on pretty much everything, the way of putting the little pods together looks neat. The top speed of the Starlancer MAX is 950 meters per second, which isn't particularly fast, but is in line with other similar ships. At those speeds she's obviously a bit more sluggish, but slamming on the handbrake by switching to SCM can help with tighter turns where needed. The quantum range of the ship is good, however able to cover significant distances, including in pyro, even if the stock drive is on the slower side. Running the Starlancer MAX isn't too bad. On ordinary trips the main costs are just fuel, and that's usually in the low thousands of Alpha UEC, but it makes money fairly well. The onboard grids store 224 SCU of cargo, that's 128 in the main body and 96 in the rear bay. The configuration for that is up to 6 32 SCU crates, topped up with up to 8 4 SCU crates to top out the rear. That's more than enough to make some profits through trading cargo, or alternatively is usually enough storage for 2 medium cargo hauling contracts at the same time. For those happy to go off-grid, there is more storage available in the vehicle portion of the rear bay, and potentially above the crate stored in the main body, but obviously using that space increases the chance of accidents and make things harder to load or unload. Personally, I just stick to the grids on this ship. The rear bay has plenty of space for vehicles, making the Starlancer MAX a potentially good choice for group rock mining. By way of upgrades, personally I'd swap out the quantum drive for something a little quicker, maybe a Chimera or something similar, but all the rest I'd personally leave as is. So, starting with the positives of the Starlancer MAX, it's definitely a step up from the Freelancer MAX in terms of cargo capacity and also the size of crates it can haul. Being able to reliably haul 2 medium-sized contracts makes it efficient to double up, and being able to split those to either side of the ship makes it easy to keep track of what goes where. For those looking to push the capacity further, off-grid storage options make it possible to eke out a little bit more performance, and having a vehicle bay at the back gives the Starlancer more utility than just hauling, opening up some versatile options. That's probably important, however, because the notable omission aboard is a tractor beam. No tractor beam means that using some of that vehicle bay for an ATLS is fairly important, but whilst the grids are well set out, using an ATLS to load and unload the ship can be a little awkward, owing to the lip above the rear cargo ramp that larger boxes love to get stuck on, and a small bump at the back of each side of the main cargo bay also providing an obstacle. Experienced loaders will get used to those little quirks, but it's harder than it needs to be. Then there's all the onboard space, which feels far more luxurious and spacious than it needs to be. There's a whole armory section, for example, which isn't useless, but for a hauler would probably be better used as additional storage. Or the incredibly luxurious double beds in the habitation section, as if somehow hauling cargo is so alluring that there'll always need to be room for 2 in the sleeping arrangements. Or the fantastical crew galley with space for entertaining. On many other ships, these little touches would be great little personality stamps, but on a ship this big, it feels like a missed opportunity for more cargo. Then there are other little quirks, like a graphics bug where a random thing sticks up from the top of the ship at some angles, hopefully easily fixed. All of that said, the Starlancer MAX does a decent job at its core for moving crates and being easy to load and unload. So that brings us to price. A brand new Starlancer MAX will cost 8.8 million credits, or $250 out of game. The competition at the lower end would be the Constellation Taurus at 8 million for 176 SCU, but with an onboard tractor beam, and at the upper end would be the Caterpillar at 12.5 million for 576 SCU. Personally, I'd probably lean towards either the Taurus for the versatility or the Caterpillar for the capacity, but I do feel the Starlancer MAX could still be an interesting choice for a mid-level hauler, just probably not my personal choice. But do you agree? Are you a fan of the Starlancer MAX? I look forward to reading your thoughts in the video comments. If you enjoyed this video, you might press the like button to help me understand what videos to make more of in future, and if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, you might like to do that too, so that YouTube knows to show you more videos like this in future. But otherwise, and as always, thank you for watching.